My boss called me into his office and said, "Daniel, my son's taking over your role as supervisor. You're out as of today." After 15 years running the production line at Oakwood Furniture in Charlotte, that was how it ended. My name's Daniel Hayes, 50 years old, and I'd spent over a decade turning that factory into a well-oiled machine, training every worker, fixing every breakdown. But that Monday morning, my boss, Frank Ellison, decided his 23-year-old son, Tyler, could do my job after just 6 weeks of training under me. I didn't argue or plead. I just nodded, packed my tools, and walked out. The other workers stared, but I wasn't angry. I was ready. See, I knew something Frank didn't. I'd never shared the critical techniques that kept the factory running, and without me, it was only a matter of time before it all fell apart. I started at Oakwood, when it was a struggling operation with 2 production lines and a reputation for late deliveries. I was 35, fresh off a layoff from a textile plant, looking for stability. Frank hired me as a floor worker, but within a year, I was promoted to supervisor. I had a knack for efficiency. I redesigned the assembly process, cut waste by 25%, and got us contracts with major retailers like Home Depot. Frank used to call me his right-hand man. "We can't run this place without you, Daniel," he'd say, clapping me on the back. But that was before Tyler graduated college with a business degree and 0 experience. Tyler started shadowing me 6 weeks ago. Frank introduced him at a staff meeting. "My son's joining us to learn the ropes," he said, beaming. "Daniel will show him everything." I didn't mind at first. Tyler was eager, asking questions about the machinery, the schedules, the supply chain, but he didn't have a feel for the work. He'd fumble with the lathes, forget safety protocols, and once nearly caused a fire by overloading a saw. I corrected him, taught him, spent extra hours making sure he didn't mess up. I figured he'd move to sales or management eventually. I never thought he'd take my job. I'd built Oakwood's production line into what it was, but I'd kept certain tricks to myself, not out of spite, but necessity. The finishing process for our oak tables, the tension settings on the sanding belts, the exact timing for the staining machines. These were things I'd learned through years of trial and error, things that kept our quality high and our returns low. I'd asked Frank for a documentation budget years ago, but he always refused. "Too costly," he'd say. "Just keep doing what you do, Daniel." So I did, but I made sure no one else knew the full picture. Call it job security. The signs of trouble started a month ago. Frank stopped joining me on the floor, leaving Tyler to report back. I'd catch them whispering in the break room, glancing my way. Tyler started taking over my meetings, giving orders I hadn't approved. I'd correct him, and he'd bristle. "I know what I'm doing, Daniel," he'd snap. "I'm not some rookie," but he was. My wife, Karen, noticed my frustration. "You're tense," she said one night over dinner. "What's going on at the factory?" I sighed. "Frank's grooming Tyler to take over. I think I'm on my way out." She frowned. "After everything you've done, what's your plan?" I smiled. "Wait and see what happens. I've got a few cards up my sleeve." When Frank called me into his office that Monday, Tyler was there, wearing a cheap suit and a smug grin. "We need to cut costs, Daniel," Frank said. "You're too expensive. Tyler's ready to step up, and he'll do it for half your salary." I looked at Tyler, who wouldn't meet my eyes, then back at Frank. "I understand," I said calmly. "I'll pack. Up by noon." Frank seemed surprised by my lack of fight. "No complaints?" he asked. I shook my head. "You've made your choice." I shook his hand, grabbed my jacket, and headed to the floor. The workers were stunned as I packed up. My toolbox, a photo of Karen and me at the Outer Banks, a coffee mug I'd gotten for my 10th anniversary, 15 years fit into one crate. Joe, a cutter I'd trained 10 years ago, approached. "Daniel, this is wrong," he whispered. "You're the heart of this place." I patted his shoulder. "They'll figure that out soon enough." I didn't tell him about the techniques, the lack of manuals, the fact that Tyler wouldn't know how to handle a single breakdown. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck, looking at the factory's faded sign. Oakwood Furniture had been my life for 15 years. I'd missed Karen's birthday once to fix a rush order, worked weekends to meet quotas, stayed late to train new hires, and now I was out, replaced by a kid I'd trained myself. But I wasn't worried. I'd seen this coming, and I'd prepared. I'd backed up my personal notes, kept a spare key to the control room, and made sure no one else knew the finishing process. At home, Karen was waiting. "What happened?" she asked, seeing the crate in my hands. I told her about Frank, Tyler, the cost-cutting. Her face hardened. "They'll regret this," she said. I nodded. "They will." I set up my laptop in the garage and reviewed my notes, every process, every adjustment, every trick I'd learned. I'd built Oakwood's reputation, and I'd left no guide for anyone else. If they wanted to run that factory without me, they'd learn the hard way. The next morning, I called an old colleague, Mike Tanner, who now ran a furniture workshop in Raleigh. Mike had been trying to hire me for years. "Daniel, I heard about Oakwood," he said when I called. "Their loss." "You ready to talk?" I smiled. "Let's meet tomorrow." I wasn't in a rush to jump back in, but I wanted options. Mike offered a partnership, on the spot, with a 40% stake in his business. I told him I'd think about it. That afternoon I drove past the factory just to see. The loading dock was backed up, 3 trucks idling, a sign of delays. I smirked. It was starting already. I went home, poured a coffee, and waited. I knew Frank would call soon. He'd realize what I'd known all along. Oakwood wasn't just a factory, it was my factory. And without me, it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. Tuesday morning, I met Mike Tanner at a diner in Raleigh, the smell of bacon and coffee filling the air. I hadn't slept much, still processing my firing from Oakwood Furniture after 15 years. Mike slid into the booth across from me, his face serious. "I heard what Frank did," he said, sipping his coffee. "Replacing you with his kid? That's low, even for him." I nodded. "Tyler's in over his head. He doesn't know the half of what I did to keep that place running." Mike grinned. "I bet he doesn't. So, what's your plan? You ready to join me at Tanner Woodworks? I've got a 40% stake with your name on it." I leaned back, considering. I'm interested, but I need a few days. Things at Oakwood are about to get messy, and I want to see how it plays out. Mike raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "Fair enough. Offers open when you're ready." I drove back to Charlotte, my mind racing. I knew Oakwood would struggle without me, the finishing process, the machine settings, the supply chain tweaks. I'd kept those details in my head for a reason. Tyler might have a business degree, but he didn't have the hands-on knowledge to handle a production line. I'd trained him on the basics, but the real magic, the stuff that kept us ahead of competitors, was mine alone. I pulled into my driveway, and Karen was waiting in the kitchen. "Any word from Frank?" she asked, pouring me a coffee. I shook my head. "Not yet, but it's coming." She nodded. "What's your next move?" I smiled. "I'm going to let them feel the heat, then build something better." That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Joe, the cutter I'd trained at Oakwood. "Production's down," he wrote. "Tyler messed up the sanding belts, and we've got a backlog of orders. Frank's yelling at everyone." I didn't reply, but I drove past the factory to see for myself. The loading dock was a mess, 5 trucks waiting, workers standing around looking frustrated. I parked a block away and watched. Tyler was on the floor, gesturing wildly at a machine that was clearly jammed. I smirked. He didn't know the trick to reset it, a 5-second fix I'd never shown him. This was just the beginning. By Wednesday, the calls started. Frank left a voicemail first. "Daniel, it's Frank. We're having some issues on the line. Tyler's doing his best, but we could use your help. Can you come in for a day, just to get us back on track?" I didn't call back. An hour later, Joe texted again. "It's getting worse. We lost a Home Depot order because Tyler used the wrong stain. They're sending back 300 tables. Frank's losing his mind." I put my phone down, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and detachment. I'd built that factory's success, and now they were seeing what happened without me. Thursday morning, I met with a real estate agent in Charlotte. I'd been saving for years, and with Mike's offer on the table, I wanted to explore my options. I found a small warehouse on the east side, perfect for a new furniture workshop. The agent, a woman named Linda, walked me through the space. "It's got good bones," she said. "Needs some work, but you could have it up and running in a month." I nodded. "I'll think about it." I wasn't ready to commit, but I wanted a plan in place. If Oakwood was going to crash, I'd be ready to rise from its ashes. That afternoon, Frank showed up at my house, his pickup truck parked crooked in my driveway. He knocked on the door, his face flushed with stress. "Daniel, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "The factory's a mess. Tyler can't handle it, and we're losing clients left and right. I need you back just for a week to fix this. I'll pay you double your old rate." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You fired me, Frank. You said Tyler was ready. Sounds like a problem for your new supervisor." Frank's jaw tightened. "Don't be like that. I made a mistake." "Okay, I'll make it right." I shook my head. "I've got other plans. I'm meeting with Mike Tanner tomorrow to finalize a partnership." Frank's eyes widened. "Tanner Woodworks? You can't work for a competitor. That's a betrayal." I laughed. "Betrayal? You replaced me with your son after I gave you 15 years. Good luck, Frank." He left, muttering under his breath, and I went back inside. Karen was waiting, a smile on her face. "You're playing hardball," she said. I nodded. They need to learn what I was worth. That evening, I got another text from Joe. "It's chaos here. Tyler broke a staining machine, and we're down to one production line. Frank's talking about layoffs." I felt a pang of guilt for the workers, guys I'd trained, friends I'd worked with for years. But this wasn't my fault. Frank had made his choice, and now he'd face the consequences. Friday morning, I drove to Raleigh to meet Mike again. This time, I brought a folder with my savings, a business plan, and photos of the warehouse I'd seen. "I'm in," I told him, "but I want to do more than join your operation. I want to start my own workshop in Charlotte. With your backing, I'll handle production, you handle sales, and we split the profit 60-40. Mike looked over my plan, nodding slowly. "You've thought this through," he said. "I like it. Let's make it happen." We shook hands, and I felt a weight lift. Oakwood was Frank's problem now. I was building my future. That afternoon, I got a call from Linda, the real estate agent. "The warehouse owner accepted your offer," she said. "You can close next week." I thanked her, then drove to the warehouse to take another look. It was rough, with peeling paint and a leaky roof, but I saw potential. I pictured new machines, a small crew, a sign out front that read Hayes Furniture Co. I'd start small, focus on quality, and poach Oakwood's best clients when the time was right. I knew their contracts, their needs, their schedules. Frank had no idea what he'd lost when he let me go. Back home, I checked my phone. 3 more voicemails from Frank, each one more desperate. "Daniel, we're losing everything," he said in the last one. "Please, I'll do anything to get you back. Name your price." I didn't call back. I poured a coffee and sat in my garage, looking over my notes from Oakwood. Every process, every trick, every lesson I'd learned. I'd built that factory's success, and now I'd use that knowledge to build something better. Frank thought he'd saved money by replacing me. He was about to learn the true cost of his decision, and I'd be there to watch it all come crashing down. Saturday morning, I woke up to 6 missed calls from Frank, each voicemail more desperate than the last. "Daniel, we're shutting down the factory," he said in the final one, his voice breaking. "We lost Home Depot, and 2 other clients pulled out. I can't keep up with the returns. Please, I'll give you anything to come back." I listened to the messages, then deleted them. I didn't feel triumph, not yet. I felt focus. Oakwood Furniture was crumbling, just as I'd known it would, and I was ready to build something better from the ashes. Frank had made his choice, and now he'd face the consequences. I drove to the factory one last time. parking a block away to avoid being seen. The lot was nearly empty, just a few workers loading the last of the equipment onto trucks. The sign. Out front read, "Closed until further notice," the letters faded and peeling. Joe spotted me and walked over, his face grim. "It's over, Daniel," he said. "Tyler ruined everything. He didn't know the finishing process, messed up the staining, and the machines kept breaking down. Frank fired him yesterday, but it was too late. We're done." I nodded, feeling a pang for the workers who'd lost their jobs. "I'm sorry, Joe, but I've got a new workshop starting up soon. I'll need a good cutter. You in?" His eyes lit. "Up, you mean it?" I smiled. "Absolutely. I'll call you next week." That afternoon, I met with Mike Tanner to sign the partnership papers for my new venture, Hayes Furniture Co. We'd agreed on a 60-40 split, with Mike handling sales and me focusing on production. I closed on the warehouse in Charlotte the next day, using my savings to buy the equipment we'd need. I hired Joe and 3 other Oakwood veterans, guys I'd trained, who knew quality when they saw it. We spent the next 2 weeks setting up, installing new machines, testing processes, and perfecting the finishing techniques I'd kept secret for years. I didn't just want to compete with Oakwood, I wanted to surpass it. By the end of the month, Frank called again, this time from a personal number. I answered, curious to hear what he'd say. "Daniel," he said, his voice hoarse, "I made a mistake. I should have never let you go. Oakwood's finished. We're filing for bankruptcy next week. I'm losing everything. I need your help to start over. I can work for you, whatever you need." I let the silence stretch, picturing the factory I'd given 15 years to, now shuttered and empty. "You had your chance, Frank," I said. "You chose Tyler over me. Now you're seeing what that cost you. I'm building something new, and I don't need you in it." He started to plead, but I hung up, blocking his number for good. Hayes Furniture Co. opened its doors 3 months later, and word spread fast. I reached out to Oakwood's former clients, starting with Home Depot. I knew their standards, their schedules, their needs. I'd been the one delivering for them all those years, not Frank. I met with their purchasing manager, a woman named Carla, who'd always liked working with me. "Daniel, we were devastated when Oakwood shut down," she said over coffee in Charlotte. "Those returns were a nightmare. Can you deliver what they couldn't?" I slid her a sample table across the table, its oak finish flawless, the grain smooth as glass. "Try me," I said. She smiled. "You're hired." Within 6 months, Hayes Furniture Co. had contracts with Home Depot, Target, and a local chain in Raleigh, all former Oakwood clients. I hired more of my old crew, giving them raises and better hours than they'd had under Frank. Joe stepped up as my lead cutter, his loyalty repaid with a stake in the business. We weren't a big operation, but we were lean, efficient, and focused on quality. Every piece that left our shop was perfect, a testament to the lessons I'd learned over 15 years, lessons Frank had thrown away when he fired me. Frank tried to start over, opening a small carpentry shop in Greensboro, but it failed within a year. I heard through Joe that Tyler had moved back in with his parents, working at a hardware store, his business degree useless, without the skills to back it up. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Their failure wasn't my victory. My victory was the workshop I'd built, the clients I'd won, the crew I'd given a second chance. I'd taken everything I'd learned at Oakwood and made it better, stronger, mine. Karen and I celebrated our first big contract with a quiet dinner at home, her famous lasagna on the table. "You did it," she said, raising her glass of wine. "I'm so proud of you, Daniel." I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. We did it. She'd been my rock through the late nights, the stress, the uncertainty. I owed her as much as I owed myself. After dinner, we sat on the porch, watching the sunset over Charlotte. The air was warm, the sky a deep orange, and I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. A year later, Hayes Furniture Co. was the talk of the industry in North Carolina. We landed a feature in a local business magazine, A photo of me and my crew in the workshop smiling over a finished dining set. The headline read, "From Fired to Flourishing: How One Man Built a Furniture Empire." I framed the article and hung it in my office, a reminder of what I'd overcome. Clients came from as far as Atlanta, drawn by our reputation for quality and reliability. I promoted Joe to operations manager, and we expanded into custom designs, something Oakwood had never dared to try. One evening, I got a call from Carla at Home Depot. "We're doubling our order next quarter," she said. "You've outdone Oakwood in every way, Daniel." I thanked her, then walked out to the shop floor. My crew was finishing a batch of chairs, their hands steady, their focus sharp. I'd built this place with them, for them, a legacy Frank could never claim. I thought about him sometimes, but not with bitterness. He'd underestimated me, and that was his mistake, not mine. I drove home to Karen, the magazine article in my hand. She met me at the door, her smile wide. "Look at you," she said, hugging me, "my furniture empire builder." I laughed, pulling her close. "It's our empire," I said. We sat on the porch again, the same sunset stretching before us, a new chapter unfolding. Frank thought he'd saved money by replacing me. He'd lost everything instead. I didn't need to tear him down. I'd built something better, something lasting, something mine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation, rising above, proving your worth in ways they can't ignore.